What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto Demi, child of Inari? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Jinchuuriki. It refers to those that hold one of the biju inside them. They are hated and feared by everyone and their lives are always hard. They are weapons to their villages, at least that is what most people assume they are. They could destroy armies with the power of the biju, yet they do not long to be free. They are beaten but don't fight against their oppression, but there is a reason for that. They are planning to leave. All of the biju originally come from the 10 tails, which used to be the world tree until its chakra was stolen. They are all connected. When the sage of 6 paths imprisoned his mother and the Jubi's body in the moon, he failed to notice that something escaped the prison before it was fully formed. Zetsu. A parasitic life form, Kaguya, the 6 paths mother, created using the last of hers and the 10 tails power. He had one goal, to revive his mother, Kaguya. The 6 paths went on to have a family and eventually had 3 children who all started their respected clans, the Uchiha, the Senju and the Uzumaki. The biju were later freed by the sage when he created bodies for them out of pure chakra. All of the biju were still connected and all of them could feel each other. They had a connection. It was hundreds of years later that they realized there was another connected to them. Zetsu, being made of the last of the chakra making up the Shinju, it was not aware that the biju knew of his existence. A connection existed between the 10 of them, but Zetsu could not properly access it due to not being a biju. But the biju could see him and could see its memories. The biju viewed Zetsu's past and his goal and knew that they needed to stop him, but all of them were already imprisoned in their Jinchuuriki, except for Kurama. Kurama tracked it down but got caught up in a fight between Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Madara, the fool that he was, thought he could control the Kyuubi, which angered him greatly, to the point where he started to fight him. Hashirama believed that the Kyuubi was coming to attack Konoha, so fought as well. Eventually, as the Kyuubi was about to kill Hashirama and Madara, Mito Uzumaki came and sealed the Kyuubi inside herself, and Hashirama finished off Madara, or so he thought. After that, Hashirama, not fully trusting the Uchiha, said that Madara could control the biju with his Sharingan and he fought them both. Taking credit for this feat, he allowed this fear of him to inspire legends. He also greatly over-exaggerated his power. The Kyuubi informed the other biju that Zetsu got away and he was sealed away. They were not happy but knew that it would take years for it to get the necessary equipment to start his plan, so they decided to outlive their hosts and escape, then to kill Zetsu. They tried to get along with their Jinchuurikis, but they didn't trust them, especially Mito. Eventually their hosts died, but to their irritation the humans tried to seal them again. Only Mito successfully transferred Kurama to the next Jinchuuriki, a young girl named Kushina. The other biju escaped, but in the next few years they had to fight for their freedom and fought the idiots who wanted to claim the title of Biju Slayer. Eventually the humans captured them whilst they were sleeping or unguarded, and they were all resealed, but after all of the lives lost trying to reclaim them, people resented the Jinchuuriki as they both feared their power and thought that they were the biju reincarnated. This was seemingly proved with Shukaku's Jinchuuriki, as they chose to use a bad seal which gave Shukaku access to their Jinchuuriki's conscious, but it resulted in the Jinchuuriki losing his mind as they could hear the whispers of the biju through their shared mind link. The Jinchuuriki could not hear what was being said, but the constant whispers drove him to insanity. He could not sleep, but it was not the biju's fault. This was when the myth that Shukaku ate souls while they slept began. The biju were horrified at what happened to their Jinchuuriki and tried to help them by allowing them some access to their power to protect them from all of the pain they had, and gave them bloodlines. This proved to be a mistake, as they were further ostracized by their villages and were forced into becoming ninjas to basically be weapons for their villages. The biju became even more disgusted by the treatment of their tenants, so they started to bring them into the shared mindscape to give them some human contact with the other Jinchuuriki. None of the villages knew anything about this. Kushina, being the only one who was a secret Jinchuuriki to other humans, revealed something to them that not even the biju expected. She was a goddess. She came from another world and came here to see what it was like. Her real name was Artemis, and she was the goddess of the moon on her world. She revealed that there were other gods were on this world. Apparently, she was not actually able to use her powers now because the body she was using is a mere fraction of her power, and once she died, she would go back to the source of her power, which was her original body. The Biju eventually told the Jinchuuriki about Zetsu and how it planned to use Madara, who was alive, to put the world in an illusion so that he could revive its mother. Of course, the Jinchuuriki agreed to try to track them down before they could begin their plan. Eventually the Jinchuuriki to Gyuki died and Gyuki was freed. He ended up fighting the third Raikage. Even though Gyuki was weak after being unsealed, he was still strong enough to hold off most of Kumo and made it to the outskirts of the village where they faced off against each other. Though he was weak and tired, he was still impressed that the Raikage managed to fight him until he could be sealed. He was sealed into a young orphan boy named Killer B. Another Jinchuuriki was also created by extracting the Biju out of an expecting mother named Mari. Kukua, being one of the more sensitive Biju, nearly broke down when she was being extracted, as this was the end for all Jinchuuriki. Mari was a very sensitive woman. She was very tall and very muscular but was very shy most of the time. She didn't particularly like many humans. But the father of her soon-to-be-born was different. Mary's last words to Kukua and the other Jinchuuriki were, "I'm so sorry I have to leave you all. I love you all and I just want you to know that all of you are my family. Kushina, I've always thought of you as a big sister. You are the reason I lived too long, and the rest of you, I love you the same way. I don't have long now, but soon you'll be able to meet my daughter. She's so beautiful and I know you're all going to love her. It seems it's my time to go. I love you all." And like that, a fine woman was gone. Finally, Kukua was re-sealed, resulting in Hana, the newest Jinchuuriki of Kukua. She was a large child and her mother was likely to die even if the Biju wasn't extracted from her. The older Jinchuuriki realized that their time was ending. At this point, Roshi, the young Jinchuuriki to Son Goku at the age of 7, left his village of Iwa. His official excuse was that he wanted to learn to control his power, but the other Jinchuuriki found out that he left to begin the search. He met up with one of the elder Jinchuuriki named Hotaru, who was Chomei's Jinchuuriki. She was a beautiful woman with a dark complexion. She had dark green hair and orange eyes. She was originally from Kumo until she was kidnapped at a young age to become Taki's Jinchuuriki. She became a missing ninja of Taki, the only minor country to have a Jinchuuriki. She left after finding out she was pregnant. She knew that in Taki her daughter would be discriminated against for being her daughter. Eventually her past caught up with her and she was captured. She was kept in a cell until her daughter was born. The village leader then forced her daughter to become the next Jinchuuriki and during a painful extraction told Chomei, "Chomei, we have been together for a long time but it's coming to an end." Chomei's response was to cry slightly. "Chomei, will you promise me one thing? Please look after my daughter, raise her as your own. I didn't know her father well, but he was one of the few that was nice and treated me as a human being. Please promise me you'll raise her." Chomei cried out a response of, "Yes," and another great Jinchuuriki died. The next Jinchuuriki to go was the Jinchuuriki to the Sanbi Isobu, died in by being assassinated for growing too powerful for the village to control, and he was murdered. This taught the other Jinchuuriki two things: not to trust the humans, and to always hide their power from them to make them think you were weak. The next Jinchuuriki was a barely 1-year-old named Yagura. Her mother abandoned her as soon as she became the Jinchuuriki and her father was nowhere to be found. Another Jinchuuriki casualty, this one on a mission, the host of Seiken, the six-tailed slug. The slug was free for a short amount of time, during which managed to find out that Madara had taken an apprentice of sorts so that when he died he would have someone to continue with his plan. Apparently, he somehow gained the Gedo Mazo statue and was planning to capture the Biju. How Seiken found this out was easy, as neither Madara or Zetsu expected anyone to know. She simply split off a part of her, similar to how the slug summoned Katsu breaks down, and snuck in while no one was looking and found out some more details of the plan this way. Though Zetsu thought he knew everything, he only knew the general points, not exact details, which is why this was done. Unfortunately, whilst communicating with her ulterior self, she was unaware of her surroundings and was sealed into a young boy by the name of Utakata. Though fortunately her slug did not disappear, and due to the psychic connection between the two, the Biju had another spy on the inside. The Jinchuuriki and the Biju were now trying to come up with a countermeasure to fight against them. Thought they had no ideas at the time. They knew they had plenty of time to go, as Madara had now died and his false Rinnegan eyes had been transplanted to a young Uzumaki boy in AIM. They knew that he would have to be old enough to use the Gedo Mezu for their plan to come into effect, and now they had plenty of time to come up with a plan. The next container to die was the Nibi's, Matabi's, container who contracted a rare disease that only the healing chakra of Kurama could heal, which unfortunately was too hard to keep sending across the connection to heal him. His name was Fumio and he was a very strong man but couldn't live off of the connection between the, as if the chakra was sent too much it might damage his ability to come to the mindscape. His reasoning behind this was, if I had to give up seeing you, my family, then I would rather die. This led to a big argument saying his life was more important, to which he replied, I want my last moments to be with you. Frankly, I'm terrified of dying, so at least allow my last moments to be with you and my little Yugito. He died the next day, his last words being, Yugito, I'm sorry I have to leave you, but I'm trusting you with your family now, trust them, and even when times get hard live on for me, and as for you Matabi, look after my baby girl for me, would you now? I think a nice nap would be good. I'll just go for a nice sleep. Please don't wake me up Matabi. He then fell asleep and the extraction began. It was painless for him as he was already dead. The next Jinchuuriki, his daughter Yugito, who was brought to him by a woman who stayed with him for a short amount of time and called herself Amoret. She returned several months later and gave him their daughter, who was now 6 months old. Amoret said she had to leave for her homeland and that her family have rules about relationships, so she must leave. He was upset as she was the first woman to ever care for him in any way due to his Jinchuuriki status. And so Yugito was left alone with no one to look after her. Luckily Killer Bee managed to find her and thought he was young. He protected her from most of the hate and took as much of it onto himself instead of the baby girl. He made sure to look after her at all times and became a guardian of sorts to her. He remembered her father always looked after him when he was getting beat up, and he made a promise to himself and all the other Jinchuuriki. He would guard her and take all the hate for her. His reasoning was that no one deserved to live like they had to, so he would make sure she didn't. The oldest Jinchuuriki of his generation, Bunpuku, the second generation Jinchuuriki of Shukaku, knew his time was ending. He had so many regrets about his life, as in the past he was the reason many of the Jinchuuriki were treated the way they were. In the past, when the whispers of the Biju wouldn't stop, he had problems sleeping and it drove him insane for a time. The Biju managed to teach him to block it out, but it was too late. When he awoke, he was in a prison cell and had been for the past 50 years. They kept him locked here and his only solace was talking to his brothers and sisters in the link. He was one of the few Jinchuuriki to reach a substantial age. Hell, he was one of the few ninjas to reach a substantial age. He was now an old man at the age of 73 and he was over the bloodlust he used to have in his youth, and now he wanted a way of being remembered. He knew he would never have children, he was too old, but he wanted to be remembered. Maybe he can give all his knowledge to the new Jinchuuriki. He loved them, he saw in them a little bit of himself before he lost his mind. He knew that is what his would do. He would leave them knowledge on all his experiences, all his jutsu, everything. He heard footsteps coming towards him. That was a first. No one ever came to see him, the guards only came to give food, and that was only in the morning and at night. It was currently about midday, as the only ones in the Biju link are the Biju themselves. That probably meant it was time. They were going to remove Shukaku. The case cage, Rasa, if he recalled correctly, walked in. It is time, Bunpuku. So, who is the lucky soul having Shukaku in them? Asked Bunpuku. I don't see how that is any of your business. I like to know which poor child's life you're going to destroy. It's my son, Rasa whispered. What seal are you going to use? The same as yours. What? You're going to drive your own child insane? Are you mad? I need a weapon for the village. And you think that destroying your son's life will give you that? Does your wife know? No, Rasa whispered. She won't know, she has to leave, something about her family rules. It doesn't matter anyway, it is time for the sealing. I guess this is it. Shukaku, can you do me a favor? Of course, what do you need, my old friend? Teach the new Jinchuuriki my style. Teach him everything, my jutsu, everything. Make sure they all know as well and protect him, make sure he doesn't suffer. Of course, my friend. I'm going to miss you. You remind me of Tucson. Thank you. It was then that one of the oldest Jinchuurikis to ever live died. He died happy knowing that he would not be forgotten and that the pain of life is over. Hello little man, he said, looking towards Gaara, Rasa's youngest son. May you enjoy your life and your new family. I hope you have a good life. Then there was only one Jinchuuriki from the second generation. Kushina sat on the top of the Hokage monument with her arms hugging her knees, tears streaming down her face. She sat on the top of her boyfriend's head. She just needed to be alone. He couldn't understand. There was no one who could understand at this point. Roshi was the closest, but even then, no one could truly understand what it is to be a Jinchuuriki. To be a Jinchuuriki, she just realized it. Even she didn't know. She was a goddess. She couldn't understand. Her status was a secret not open to the public. She knew she would do what she could to stop this Zetsu's plan, but she would need to be careful. If she died, she could not actually return. She could do nothing if she died, and now, there is a reason she knew she was weak compared to her original. She started to stand. There are so many options to what could happen. She could tell Minato. He might not believe her. Obito was his student. He wouldn't believe him. As she stood up fully, one would notice the bulge in her stomach. There were problems with the Biju connections because she was pregnant. The seal would be weak. The only reason the others risked using the connection when pregnant was because Mari knew she was going to die, and Hotaru had Roshi to boost the signal and take the both of them across. She didn't want to risk it. Her baby was not going to be a Jinchuuriki. She would make sure that her baby would not suffer. She went to her apartment. Minato was waiting for her. He was the one man she loved. At least this part of her did. She had no idea what the rest of her would think. She would have her baby, and then the rest of her would do what it would. Her baby was coming. She was so happy she couldn't wait. It hurt, though. He was taking his damn time. But he was her son, Databane. She really needed to get rid of that. It was getting annoying, and what if her son inherited it? She found out that the other Olympians had been here to visit, but she was the only one that she knew would go the way she did by making her own body. She'd never had a demigod before, but she was still a virgin. She used an illusion to get her boyfriend to make her baby. It may seem manipulative, but she didn't want her baby to be in trouble for her oath being broken. There was her baby. He was hers. Her baby boy. She would protect him with all she had. She was exhausted. Bawako came and took him so that Minato could fix the seal. She went out of the room, and Minato was beside her, keeping poor Kurama-chan in her. If Kurama wanted out, Kurama would probably be out. She heard a scream and turned. There was the masked man, Obito. She could not call out to him, but what was he doing here, and why was he holding her baby? He was after the Kyuubi and was threatening her baby. She couldn't allow that. She tried to stand, but Kurama and just giving birth took its toll. She couldn't see what was going on, but were those explosive tags? Obito had her now. Kurama-chan was getting out. Kurama was talking to her. Why couldn't she understand? Why she didn't open the link? Then they could have been warned. No, it was her fault. If this was her fault, then, no. Her son could be hurt because of her. There was a flash. Minato. He took her. Where is he? Where is my baby Minato? He was on the bed. He was on the bed. He was fine. Her baby was okay. She looked outside. Why was Kurama-chan attacking? Kurama has no idea what is going on. She tried to stop Minato, tell him to call of the ninja, but he was gone. She was alone with her baby. She remembered the name they decided on with help from Jiraiya-sensei. Naruto. Minato came back. He took Naruto. Why would he? No, not her baby. She wouldn't let him take her baby and make him into a Jinchuuriki. No. She sprinted away to find him to stop Kurama-chan to save her baby. She saw Kurama-chan disappear in a flash of light. That could only mean, where is her baby? She searched for Minato's chakra signature. It was miles away. She sprinted. She came just in time to see him finish the hand signs. No. She screamed, but it was too late. The ghostly apparition of the Shinigami appeared behind him. She heard Kurama-chan screaming, telling him to stop. She heard Naruto crying, screaming as the cold hand plunged into his stomach, sealing his fate as a Jinchuuriki. Kurama-chan was gone, but Minato was still there. He didn't have long. She went to his side, sobbing all the way. Why? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why, our son? Why did you condemn his life to hell? Why? Screaming the last sentence with as much anger as she could while staring at her husband's dying form. What kind of man would I be if I asked someone else's child to bear this burden? A smart man. No, a coward. He said simply, this is going to be the last time I will ever see you. At least try to be happy. He said, wheezing. He didn't have long, and he knew it. I love you, she said, cradling his head in her lap, tears streaming down her face, but she smiled. For him. And I love you, and so, he said, going into his pocket, Kushina Uzumaki, he pulled out a ring. Will you please marry me? I am the Hokage, so I already have the paperwork done. All I need is you to say yes. Yes, she cried, a fresh batch of tears coming down. Of course I'll marry you. Good, please take care of our son. I will with all of my being. Then, if this is going to be the last chance I get to say it. Kushina sobbed even more as the harsh reality hit her. Kushina Uzumaki, I love why. And with that Konoha's Yondaime Hokage, Konoha no Kiroi Senko, the husband of Kushina Uzumaki and the father of Naruto Uzumaki, Minato Namikaze died. Shortly after, Kushina started to feel weak and her heart slowed. No, I can't die now. But her body gave up. She curled around her baby and with her arms around her husband with Naruto in the middle and whispered into her baby's ear, I'm so sorry sweetie, but I'll come back as soon as I can, I promise. And with that, Kushina Uzumaki died. In the deserts of Sunagara, no Subaku cried, causing the sand around him to curl around him protectively. In the mountains of Kumo, Yugito ni cried as hard as she could because she felt the nice lady who was nice to her in her dreams go away. Killer Bee stopped, and at that moment he felt a wave of grief as one of the few genuinely nice people in the world left. He stood in silence for a moment before hugging Yugito so they could cry on each other's shoulders. Yagura, at the age of 5, she felt she could handle anything, but then she couldn't feel her, the person who she trusted, who she loved, she was gone. Roshi, now in his early 20s, was walking down a lane when he felt a wave of pain hit him. She was gone, her connection broken. So, he did the only thing he could. He sat under a tree and cried. Hana, being very young, couldn't understand everything very well, but she knew that all of the people around her were monsters, so when she felt the one who stopped the monsters, she told her that was her job. Disappear, she wept in despair. Fu knew that everyone around her were not the same as her, she was better and they hated her for it, they were jealous, so she didn't care, so when one of the few people she cared about was gone, she sat in her tree and cried. Killer Bee sat there as he hugged Yugito. He could feel a new connection being formed. It seemed there was a new member to their family. He must have been Kushina's son. They all knew he would be born son, and when they found out she was pregnant, they were worried that the same thing that happened to Hoturo and Mari would happen to her, but she was the Hokage's girlfriend. Unfortunately, the newly formed Akatsuki chose her as their first victim. She was unassuming as she could not enter the link with her failing seal. They tried to warn her, but none of them could get anywhere near Konoha. They failed her. He cried harder. Naruto didn't know what had happened. He was scared. Then mommy made the scar go away. But then she did as well, but she was right there, so he just sat there and cried. In another world, Artemis stiffened. She was at her camp when suddenly memories hit her. So many memories, but it was the later ones that caused her breath to stop. Her baby was still there in that horrible place, but she couldn't go back. Her father and the rest of the gods had been there, and they all agreed because it was for the best to shut it off from their world. At least temporarily, until it was safe to go. 16 years it would be locked away, inaccessible to everyone, even the gods. She gasped as tears rolled down her cheeks. She had just actively condemned her son to a life of hell without knowing it. She cried. Her hunters watched confused. They heard her muttering, please be okay, please just be okay. Until then, mom is coming, baby. On Olympus, many of the other gods barely cared that they either had children there or that they left them alone and scared. None of them knew what their children had become. None knew the pain they would suffer or the lives they would live. They all assumed they would be fine, at least until they were allowed to return for them. The problem with other worlds is that you can't keep the door open too long, as it causes damage to the rest of the world. To stop this, the gods agreed to close the door to this new world. Some weren't happy about it but agreed it needed to be done. Most of the gods had, in secret, gone there to have children. This gave them a chance to wind down for their godly duties. Most of them had actually created a body for themselves using their power, which had the result of them being able to spend as much time as they could. Unfortunately, they went in at different times, so they couldn't keep track of one another. Most of the gods chose adult bodies with the exception of Artemis, who chose a child's and created hers to join another family. This meant that they were likely to die earlier because the body could only handle so much. Artemis was the exception, as she put such a small amount of her power in her that she wasn't even demigod level but was strong enough to live. The others eventually left, leaving only Artemis' body there, which would come across the dimension regardless if the door was open or not. 4 years later. It was once again October 10th, and Naruto Uzumaki, now 4 years old, was once again on the hiding from a mob of villagers with a random assortment of weapons. There were also ninjas in the mob. How was he, a 3-year-old, hiding from them? He wasn't. The mob was playing with their prey. This usually happened at least 2 or 3 times a week. The rest of the time the poor toddler was either in the apartment he was given, which was always broken into and damaged by the villagers, or he was being beat around by smaller groups. He barely ate anything, and what he did eat was normally moldy or poisoned. You could tell he was malnourished just by looking at him. His ribs could be seen, and so could most of his other bones. He was frail and sickly looking, but he ran to get further away from them. His hiding spot wouldn't work for long. He lost them for a second and snuck into an alley. He hid in one of the bins and waited for them to pass him by. The bin was moved and he was tossed in front of an angry mob of ninjas and civilians. He tried to back away, but he knocked into a man who towered over him. He looked down on him and laughed at his scared face. Then the torture began. It lasted for so long, and by the time it started to slow down the sun was up and other civilians started coming out. At about 8 they stopped and left his body there broken and in so much pain. He was still conscious at this point, so he could see the bone, skin and muscle heal up. He made his way to his apartment and fell onto his mattress, which had more springs in it than anything that resembled a cushion. He looked around at his room, which looked like a bomb had hit it, which was right, as many people had bombed him at some point, but he always healed from it. His eyes fell on a knife that one of his attackers must have left from an attack. He lifted it and stared at his reflection on the blade. He looked down on his thin wrist and brought the knife to it. He cut himself and he could already see it healing. He kept doing this for a while. He wanted it to end. He didn't like living. He took the knife one last time and plunged it into his chest. He felt unconsciousness take him and he smiled. Was it finally over? Was he free? He woke up in his room in the same place without a scar, and the knife was still in his hand, only the blood around him told him it wasn't a dream. 4 years later, he woke up in a room he didn't recognize. He tried to move but found himself crucified to a backboard. He cried. Why was he still alive? He had another suicide attempt. There was a woman standing in front of him. She had blonde hair and green eyes. She looked at the 8-year-old and started speaking. He was told that she was going to break him over and over and that she would bring friend to have some fun with him. She broke into the demon brat's house only to find him in a pool of his own blood with a kunai in his chest. She pulled it out and watched the demon heal itself. So, it tried to kill itself. That couldn't happen. She hadn't tortured it enough, so she took it home. She decided that she should teach it a lesson. She decided it was time and she would make sure he knew his place. She had lost a lot in the demon's attack. 3 weeks later, Yugao Azuki was a newly promoted jonin heading towards Anbu. Her sensei died and she found out her child died in the Kyuubi attack. She went into a small depression but managed to make it through it with the help of Kurenai and Anko, her best friends and teammates, who also had to deal with the loss of her sensei. Hayate also helped with this. All of them had lost people that night, but as an orphan, Kushina had acted as a mother figure while she was her sensei, and even when they made it to Chunin she was always there for her. When she found Kushina was pregnant, she was so happy to have a little brother or sister. Kushina had laughed at that and thanked her for that. It was then that Kushina asked her to be her baby's godmother. She agreed immediately and was brought into the biggest hug she could imagine. She remembered that day as it was one of the greatest days of her life. Now she had a mission. She had to find the young blonde Jinchuuriki of the very thing that took away her sensei. She tried to see him as a young boy and not the monster that attacked her home and took her sensei, but she couldn't. She had never been part of the mobs for him a few times but didn't feel any satisfaction, so she just watched and tried to deny the happy feeling when she watched him suffer. But he had been missing for 3 weeks. It wasn't noticed at first, but when no one saw the boy for so long, the council realized they could have lost their weapon. She had been assigned to find him, or at least his corpse, but she hoped for the former, as her sensei had told her only an Uzumaki could hold the Kyuubi. Her eyes widened, realization hit her. No, there was only one Uzumaki in the village before the Kyuubi attack, and that was her sensei. Her pregnant sensei. She had been watching her godson suffer. She had made no attempt to help him if she saw him being beaten up. She needed to find him, she needed to apologize, she needed to save him from whoever took him, and she would make sure to look after him and make sure he's never hurt again. Determination filled her as she scoured the village for leads. At first, she asked several villagers who lived near his apartment. The responses were, as to be expected. The villagers sneered and said they would not go near the demon. Several of the more vocal demon haters nearly made Yugao lose it, but she acted calmly, only acting if the Sandame's law was broken. She then decided that the next place to look was his home. She nearly cried at the state of her godson's home. She hadn't told anyone about her suspicions, even if it was pretty obvious. She saw some of the Sandame's reasons. A child of the fourth would be hunted relentlessly by many nations. So, she searched his home, his ratty mattress that had springs sticking out making it painful even to look at. She searched his bathroom and froze at the sight of all the dried blood. She glanced around the room, so much blood, too much for an 8-year-old. She searched the room and found a kunai lying on the ground near the bath. There were footprints through the dry blood, but whoever did it had the sense to wipe their feet on his doormat. There were no fingerprints on the kunai. Gaps in the blood and the rough shape of hands stained the floor. Someone was lying on the floor. They held the kunai? What for? The kunai was years old, rusted and nearly dyed red with blood. It had been used a lot, but for what? A horrible suspicion came to Yugao. She hoped she was wrong. The person was on the floor, Naruto. Their figure was painted gray on the floor of red, showing he was here. She traced the footsteps, adult, female, 130 pounds, wearing boots, not ninja, civilian? Or a good ninja. They came here, took the knife off Naruto and threw it to the side, then grabbed Naruto and left. She followed the footsteps as they led to the doormat, a dirty rag. The blood was evident. So, someone took Naruto away. Where? She retraced the steps and found something interesting. They slipped. Yugao muttered, slipped on blood, must have been fresh. She tried to ignore the implication that this gave and looked up to the dresser. A bloody handprint, no fingerprints. She still wore the gloves, but they left something else, a clump of hair. Yugao said, failing to hide the smirk, hair was traceable, blonde, not common, so that narrowed down the suspects. She lifted it. It was caught on the dresser as the assailant slipped. The reason was down to the fact that the dresser was more splinter than functioning furniture. The sides were spiky and impossible to use. Regardless, Yugao examined it. It was dirty blonde, not Yamanaka, not Naruto either. His was golden blonde, so who? Most people in the village had brown or black hair, with some exotic alternatives like herself and Anko. They were civilian. A ninja wouldn't leave this much evidence, even if they were trying to play the part of a civilian. She looked back to the footprints, and rich. At the bottom of the shoe it showed the logo. These were expensive shoes, so the civilian is either a foreigner. Unlikely, since they wouldn't go after Naruto without knowing who he is. She flinched at her own mistake. So rich civilians in Konoha? She thought through all the names she knew, only one fit, Haruno. And so, she studied the Harunos and tracked their movements. Asking villagers, she managed to find out that Mebuki Haruno had been seen going to his apartment when he was last seen. She had then followed the Haruno matriarch to a warehouse. She snuck in through a side window and followed her down to the basement level. There she saw the most horrendous sight she had ever seen. Her godson was tied up and was being tortured by a large group of women. The room smelt of blood and they had raped him, she realized. Her head was reeling, so she looked to the center of the room. She nearly threw up when she saw what they were doing to him. He lay on the ground with his hands nailed down to the ground. Right now, he was being cut up by 3 women and she felt bile coming up when she recognized who it was. Mebuki was currently torturing him. She leapt down and stopped her just before she plunged the knife into his chest. She stood over him protectively and pushed her away. She could see that Naruto had passed out a few minutes ago and could already see his skin patching itself up. She looked up to see the shocked look on Mebuki's face. She saw all of them running out of there and could make out some of the faces as the wives of high-ranking officials. It was just her and Naruto's unconscious body. She grabbed onto Mebuki and tied her before unceremoniously throwing her to the ground and turning her attention to freeing Naruto. She tried to move him but found him bound to the ground using ninja wire and chains. She would take a while to cut through them. She created 3 shadow clones and sent them to find her teammates on the 3rd. Anko and Kurenai arrived first, both looking at the downed form of Mebuki before turning to see Yugao and Naruto still tied down. They scowled upon seeing the young child. To them, he killed their sensei and her child. They both thought she had brought them to take their own revenge on the demon. Kurenai raised a kunai but was stopped by Yugao. "What are you doing, Yugao?" Kurenai asked, confused. Why would Yugao stop her from taking justice for their sensei's death? "This is a bit much though," she said, looking around the room and seeing the blood. She may hate the demon, but this was cruel. "Yeah, why bring us here just to stop us now, and what is that smell?" Holy shit, did you rape him? I mean, that's a bit far, but at least let us take our revenge, Yu-chan. This demon deserves this. It took away Kushina-sensei. Anko said, equally confused. After her sensei, Orochimaru, left her while she was young, she had no one. But then Kushina-sensei saved her and became her sensei and mother figure. He's just a boy and sensei would be disappointed at you. Yugao screamed, though she had tears from the earlier revelation and the state of Naruto's body. No, she wouldn't. Sensei is dead because of this monster. Anko screamed. She knew her sensei, and now that she was gone she wanted revenge. She hated that demon even more than Orochimaru. You're right, Yugao whispered, and Anko and Kurenai calmed down, thinking she would help them now. She would hate you, she would despise you. At this both Anko and Kurenai froze. Don't, Kushina-sensei cared about us. Anko yelled. Sensei was sensei. Don't talk about sensei like that. Anko said. She couldn't think of anything to say to that. Yugao, why would you say that? I know losing sensei was hard on you, it was hard on all of us, but don't just say she'd hate us. Kurenai said, her voice quiet. Talking about their sensei had become somewhat taboo to them. She would hate she would hate us. Yugao said. Her mind was having trouble forming the words and tears escaped her. We let this happen, we let them hurt her son. My godson, she finally whispered. It had all suddenly become very real. Kurenai froze, her face paled white and her eyes widened, becoming glassy. She finally looked at Naruto and quietly whispered out. No, but Anko just looked scared. No, Anko finally whispered. No, her son died. It can't be. It can't, she screamed at the end. Remember what sensei said about the Kyuubi's Jinchuuriki? Yugao said, pulling herself together. They can only be in Uzumaki. Kurenai whispered out. That doesn't mean he's her son. Anko screamed out. So, trying to kill one of her remaining family is any better? Besides, who else does he look like? Yugao said. Minato, Kurenai whispered out with tears slowly crawling down her face. No pleasse no. Anko whispered out, shaking her head violently and her eyes closed, denying it. No, 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 she finished by breaking down into tears and collapsing onto her knees. She was quickly joined by Kurenai. Yugao was tempted to join them after looking down on her godson's body, but she couldn't. She had to help him, then she could beg him for his forgiveness. She finally managed to cut him free of his bindings and then just held his body close to her. He was cold and his pulse was weak. She tried using some medical ninjutsu. The third Hokage was alerted to come to the warehouse, and when he arrived the sight of Naruto Uzumaki's unnaturally still body in the arms of Yugao Izuki, his heart nearly stopped at the sight of his self-proclaimed grandson and thought that he was dead, but then saw the soft rise and fall of his chest and was relieved. He looked around to find the sight of two of his most promising kunoichi, Anko and Kurenai, crying on the floor, whispering to themselves. They looked broken. What happened to them? What happened? He asked Yugao. Why did you lie to us? Why did you tell us he was dead? Why did you let me think my godson was dead? The third looked shocked, then he schooled his features. He then spoke with no emotion in his voice. How did you find out? He asked. I guessed. Sigh. At the start, I hated him as much as you did. My wife was dead, my successor and so many of our village had fallen. I wanted him to suffer, so I told all those who would have been relevant that he died. I then announced what he was to the village to make him suffer. I regretted it. That is why I made the law to protect him. I grew to care for him but could do nothing to help him. The Anbu hate him, so I can't have them guard him, and I was too ashamed to tell you I had lied. Shame? My godson is nearly dead because of your pride? Yugao yelled, standing up and cradling the small boy in her arms. He whimpered and she looked down again, fresh tears breaking out. Don't try to take the moral high ground here. I know you have been no help. I know you watched him as the mobs hunted him down. I know you even pointed them in the right direction on occasion. Was his reply. She couldn't reply to that. She was too busy crying due to her shame. At this point Kurenai and Anko had stopped crying and had moved closer. Is he okay? Kurenai whispered out through sobs. What do you think? Yugao replied, which made both Kurenai and Anko flinch back as if hit. Yugao. The aged Hokage said sternly. You're in no position to say anything. You're right, he's unconscious, possibly comatose. I don't know enough about medical ninjutsu to help, but he seems to have stabilized. Anko and Kurenai flinched at the words. What happened here? The third asked with authority. They turned to the Haruno. She spoke of exactly what they did to him. She even seemed smug. As the list went on, they became more ashamed. During the 3 weeks, he'd been tortured in ways that would make Ibiki scream out every secret he knew and cry like a child. He'd been raped, crucified, gutted, burned alive, been a target dummy for all of the justice the ninja could think of, and he had been kept awake nearly the whole time. When he did collapse into unconsciousness, he was woken as quick as possible. By the end, all 4 ninjas were paler than Orochimaru. At the end, the third had one question: "You raped him?" he questioned. Kurenai, Anko and Yugao became green at this. "No, I wouldn't touch that filth in that way. Anything else you want to confess?" The third asked angrily. "Yes, ha ha, we wanted him to know his place. So, we got some of the ninja in the group to help with that. They used henges to turn into as many kunoichi as they could. He'll be afraid of women his entire life." She giggled. "And guess what? You 3 were used a lot. Along with that bitch of a sensei of yours. She may be dead, but he will curse her forever. I thought you were smart, but now I see you all are just demon-loving bitches." The 3 were horrified. Their little brother, could they even call him that, would hate them and his mother. "You bitch," Anko yelled before taking a kunai to gut her. She was stopped by the third. "Anko," he said, "she will be put in a cell and tortured before being executed publicly. No one will hurt Naruto like this again. She will serve as an example to the others." Once the women calmed down, he brought them all to the hospital, where Naruto was given his own room after firing 3 nurses and getting a doctor to take care of him. It was at this point that the third broke news that nearly broke them. "What do you mean we can't look after him?" Yugao asked. "He's going to be traumatized by this, and I'm going to keep him away from anyone involved in this incident." The third replied. "But I'm his godmother," Yugao said, horrified at the prospect of being kept from her godson. "He'll remember you from tonight. He's a smart boy, and he won't forget easily. There are barely a handful who he trusts anyway," was his reply. "We won't leave him unprotected anymore," Anko said. "Then do it from the shadows, he can't see you." The third then got a glimmer in his eyes that only old people can do. "Anko, Kurenai, Yugao, you will be promoted to Anbu and act as his guards until further notice." They looked down on his comatose body and wondered when, if ever, he would wake. The third told them where to go, and they left to report to the Anbu commander, who gave them masks and equipment. As soon as they got all their new equipment, they returned to the hospital to watch over his sleeping form, silently agreeing to never let him get hurt again. In Naruto's mind, Naruto woke up in what looked like a sewer with about a foot of water. He sat down and cried, the memories of what happened still haunting him. He stayed like that for hours, ignoring the noises coming from around him. Finally, though, he stood up, looked around, and decided that he needed to get out of here. He knew the people who hurt him would come back. He snuck through the sewer. Even though there was no light source, he still could see, though that was the last thing on his mind. He stayed close to wall and flinched at every single sound, every drop from the leaky ceiling, every splash he accidentally caused, and continued on his journey. After being lost for a while, he decided to follow the only sound other than him. He tried to hide as much as possible, but there was very little to hide behind. He couldn't quite make out what the noise was, but to him it sounded like someone talking to another person who wasn't there. He made it to a golden gate with a piece of paper with some scribbles written on it. Behind it he could hear the voice. It sounded angry, but he could hear the sadness as well from the voice. He tried to see who was behind the gate, but he couldn't see who. All he could see was the silhouette of something huge, but he couldn't see anyone about. And now he's in a coma because of them. "We need to do something." "What do you mean introduce yourself? It's not that easy. This seal was designed to keep me away from him. If it were that easy, then we might not be in this situation. It's all the Yondaimi's fault. We respected him until the point he sealed me the way he did. If he had done it any other way, or if he waited for Kushina, hell, if he even tried to talk, he would know I never attacked. All I did was stop anyone from going near the hospital where Kushina and the kid were. They were throwing destructive jutsu and random and destroying parts of the village. Especially the Uchiha. Damn pyromaniacs. Well, it wasn't my idea to let them go and breed like rabbits to the point where there was enough of them to have their own district." What the old man thinking? Asura was no better either. He was all about love. That was no answer either. Yeah, he was a bit better, but he was still the same. The best ones are them. They understand pain and yearn for happiness. Wait, he's here. Well, he can't hear you. This damn seal won't let you see or hear him. Only I can. Naruto nearly ran away when he saw a pair of eyes each easily twice as tall as the old man who sometimes looks after him. They were red and had a slit like a cat down the middle. Hello, Naruto. The voice was talking to him and it seemed to come from the eyes that were staring right at him. He couldn't move. He could only stare in horror as they got closer until he could make out the face they were attached to, and it was quite the face. A giant fox with deep orange fur. Around its eyes were 2 black circles that went onto its ears. It had 9 tails behind it. He had only one thought. Kyuubi. That is how I'm normally referred to as. The fox said. Whwhe re am I? You are in your mind, which in your body, which is currently in the hospital in a coma. Kurama said, the last part sounding sad. Whwhyaar re youhe here? I'm inside you. Your Hokage sealed me into you on the day you were born. I was taken out of my last host seal and appeared in the village. The Hokage put me inside you, on a little bit of ink on your stomach. Calm down, I won't hurt you. I'm the one who tries to stop you from hurting. Okay, are you the liaison that I won't die? He said, the words sounding unsure. Yes, your body will automatically heal because I'm inside you? Could you stop please? What? Why? The Kyuubi was shocked. Why would he ask that? The Biju chakra running through him was the only thing keeping him from death too many times for anyone to be comfortable with. Because I want to die. This broke the Kyuubi's heart. This child wanted to die all because he was a Jinchuuriki, because their lives are torture and his was the worst out of all of them. Sure, the other Jinchuuriki got beat up occasionally and had horrible social lives, but they had nothing on his. It was understandable. No kid, I can't let you die. Naruto looked sad. Tears freely fell, and Kurama felt like killing that entire village. But I can help you. There are people like you. They won't hurt you. They can't hurt you. They will be your friend. Would you like that? Yes please. Are you why they hurt me? Yes. I'm sorry, they think you're me and are mad because I attacked their village. How did you get in the middle of the village on my birthday? Like I said, I was unsealed from your mother. A man named Obito Uchiha tried to put me under his control to attack the village. Unfortunately, that idiot overestimated the power of the Sharingan. Okay, I understand, but what is a muter, mo-ot there? It was the first time he had heard that word. The Kyuubi looked shocked but quickly understood that this was the first time he heard the word. Again, the Kyuubi felt sorry for this poor child. A mother is the person who cares for you. She's normally the person who gave birth to you. She teaches you things and helps you. Your mother is gone. I'm sorry kid. Can you be my mother? The Kyuubi was again shocked. Why would this child want a monster to be his mother? No one wanted the Biju for anything except power. Why would you want me as your mother? Well, you said my mother left me, so she didn't leave you kid. She loved you kid, she died. Oh, he looked sad again, and Kurama berated himself. Naruto brightened up a bit. Well, you said that mothers care for you. They were there when you were born and teaches stuff. That's what you do. So, could you? Kurama smiled sorrowfully at the young Jinchuuriki. Yes, of course I'll be your Ka-chan. Thank you, Ka-chan. You're welcome Sochi-kun. Ka-chan, did you mean it when you said I can have friends? Friends? Yeah, that. Are there any people like me? Yes, you can talk to them through the mindscape, but you have to open the cage. Ka-chan, I can't reach it. Naruto sounded scared and was trying his hardest to jump to the paper seal. Don't worry, I'll help. The Kyuubi then used one of its tails to lift Naruto to the seal. Just as he was about to reach the seal, and after saying something that sounded suspiciously like, Ka-chan is so soft, a hand stopped him from reaching the seal. They both looked at the owner of said hand, and Naruto hid in the Kyuubi's tail while the Kyuubi growled out, You. Ka-chan, I'm scared. He's the Yan Nun Da Aim me. Is he going to hurt me? No, he won't try to hurt you, but he'll try to keep you away from me. Kyuubi, what lies have you told my son? I have told him no lies. I've told him the truth. Since you didn't bother to listen to me when I told you to. The whole thing is Obito's fault. What does he have to do with anything? He's been dead for many years. He was the man in the mask who tore me from Kushina. He has been working for Madara, but that is not important. What is important is what you have done to your son. Minato looked shocked. What do you mean by that? He has suffered worse than any other Jinchuuriki, and I've met them all. I've seen all of their lives and I can safely say that no one has suffered as much as him in this world. You lie, my people wouldn't do that. Minato screamed. Naruto whimpered and hid further in the Kyuubi's fur. Minato calmed and Kyuubi spoke soothing words to calm the poor boy. Look at what you have done. Now calm down Naruto-kun, no one's going to hurt you. The Kyuubi then told Minato all that has happened in his short life. Minato was left crying for the life he unintentionally gave his son. This is why I want him to release the seal. To kill himself? No. So, he can meet the others. The others? The other Jinchuuriki. We are all connected. Why the Biju let the Jinchuuriki meet in the mindscape to keep their sanity. We aren't demons, we are chakra. We care for them. So, you won't kill him? No. I've been keeping him alive, but since your seal won't let me help him more than healing him. Why did you pick this seal anyway? It killed you. Because you were attacking the village. You were killing innocent villagers. I didn't attack anyone. They started firing jutsus at me and started missing. They hit the hospital. I protected it from the idiots you employ as ninja. Then I moved away from the hospital to get them to stop shooting at it. I then sensed Obito and started to head towards him. I may have crushed a few people, but I didn't care. I just wanted to kill that idiot. Then I saw you fight him and I went to help, but he escaped, and then you didn't listen when I told you to stop fighting me. Then you called on the Shinigami to seal me. Well, Minato began but noticed he was beginning to fade. I guess my time is up. Naruto, I love you and I'm so sorry, my son. With that, the last remnants of Minato Namikaze died. Naruto stopped hiding in Kyuubi's tail and peered out just in time to see his father disappear. He's gone now, Naruto. You're safe now. Now can you open the seal, please? Yes, Ka-san. And with that he reached out and pulled open the seal. Behind it was another seal in the shape of a spiral. The Kyuubi sighed at this and realized that the seal could not fully be opened without a key seal. This was going to be difficult, but at least now they could talk while he was awake. Getting him into the mindscape was going to be hard and he would be unable to interact with any of the Jinchuuriki besides talking. Well, Naruto, now that that seal is gone you can enter the cage, but you won't be able to touch any of the other Jinchuuriki. You will only be able to talk. Thank you. And with that Naruto entered the cage. He followed his new Ka-san. She led him through an archway that led to a bright light. Naruto closed his eyes and held onto his Ka-chan tightly, and he waited till it died down before turning back. He looked out and was amazed by what he saw. He appeared to be in a giant forest with trees that were bigger than his Ka-san. He was getting scared. His Ka-chan seemed to realize this, so he soon found himself on his Ka-chan's back, which he enjoyed. It was so soft and fluffy like a big orange cloud. At that moment, in the comfort of his Ka-chan, he decided his favorite color was orange. He slowly fell asleep, and for the first time in his short life he fell asleep happy. He slowly woke up and stayed where he was. He was comfortable. He heard some voices, but he wasn't to move. If he stayed there, then maybe he wouldn't be hurt anymore. Maybe the bad people couldn't reach him here. He felt something tickle his nose and he wrinkled it. The tickling sensation stayed there, so he tried to swat it away. He kept missing it, but it always returned to tickle him. He opened his eyes and rubbed them. He faintly heard something that sounded suspiciously like a young girl screaming, "Kawaii." He finally opened his eyes to see a giant fluffy tail and assumed that was the perpetrator, so he grabbed in and pulled it into his arms with the mission to stop the tickling, but upon realizing it was as fluffy as his mattress, curled up around it, holding onto it tightly. He was lowered to the ground and held onto his blanket. He heard some giggling and opened his eyes again. He saw the silhouette of 8 people and some oddly shaped moving mountains. Once he saw the people, he moved himself behind his giant fluffy pillow to hide from the people who had obviously come to hurt him. He heard a voice that sounded familiar to him and recognized it as his new Ka-san. "Don't worry, Naruto, they won't hurt you. They are the people who are like you and will be your friends." He remembered everything about the last conversation and realized that his bed was his Ka-san's back and that his pillow was one of her tails. He looked about and saw 8 people. The first looked a bit older than he did. He had red hair and pale blue eyes which had black rings around his eyelids. He was wearing a brown cloak over his other clothes which he couldn't make out. He had a stuffed bear and was holding it close. The next was a young girl with blonde hair. She was about 9 and had dark eyes. Her hair was done up in a ponytail that fell behind her back. She was wearing a dark purple dress that finished just above her knees. Next was another girl who looked to be about 12. She had short hair which was a pale green. She was wearing all green with a ninja vest that could be seen underneath it. She had pink eyes with no pupil. She also had a scar going down from her left eye which looked like it had been stitched up. She had a large hook staff with a flower on one end and was holding it behind her. She looked like a ninja and had a forehead protector stitched onto the front of her shirt. It was a protector of Kiri. Next was a man who looked close to 30. He had red hair that looked pretty long. He wore it in a ponytail. He had the beginnings of a beard and had a strange blue curved line that went over the bridge of his nose and onto his cheeks. He had a brown head that went over the sides of his face but didn't cover the top of his head at all. On it was a forehead protector for Iwa. Next was someone who he couldn't really say anything about them. They were nearly as tall as the red-headed man and wore a lot of red. They had armor on with a large hat, so the only thing he could see was their hazel eyes. They had a strange object on their back that was giving off some steam. The person next to the right of them was a boy who didn't look much older than he did. He had black hair, which was getting long and starting to cover one of his eyes, and brown eyes. He was wearing a long blue dress? Was Naruto's first thought that had his chest exposed. He was blowing bubbles out of a pipe and seemed to be happy with doing just that. The seventh person was a small teenage girl who looked to be about 9 and was wearing a small brown dress that looked old and ragged. She had green hair? And orange eyes? Her hair had an orange hairclip in it and it was cut short. She had a strange red cylinder on her back. She also had a very dark complexion. The final person was a teenage boy with pale yellow hair. He had a tanned complexion, slightly darker than the seventh person. He was wearing sunglasses and had a Kumo headband around his head and also had 4 swords on his back. When Naruto saw the people, he started to back away again, and when he saw the girls he started to hyperventilate. They looked at him and started to walk closer and he backed away further. Naruto calmed down, his Ka-chan said, "They won't hurt you, they are like you." He started to calm down but he was terrified. He was scared of people in general, but after what happened to him for all of those weeks he was absolutely terrified by women. This was understandable, he had rarely had any nice human contact, so meeting new people was hard for him. Hi, said the girl with green hair. Hi, I'm NN Naruto, he replied stuttering, not looking at her, his eyes going to the ground. You're beneath normal people. The woman had said, don't even look at us. He flinched at the memory. I'm Fu, this is Gaara, Yugito, Yagura, Roshi, Hana, Utakata and Killer Bee, and these are the Biju. She indicated behind her to what he originally assumed were oddly shaped mountains. That's Shukaku, Matabi, Isobu, Son Goku, Kukua, Seiken, Chome, Yuki and of course, your Biju, Kurama. Fu finished pointing to each Biju before finally pointing to his Ka-chan. As his brain tried to process all of the new names, he looked around. The sheer size of the room he was in was baffling. Where are we? In his amazement, he lost his stutter for a moment. We are currently in the shared mindscape. More precisely, we are at Kurama's end of the mindscape because your seal won't let you get into the proper mindscape. Yuki said. Okay, but how are you here? He asked, finding it infinitely easier to talk to the giant animals than the humans. Were they monsters, like him? We aren't. The mindscape connects our minds, we are all where we fell asleep. So are you. Kukua answered. By the way, Isobu began. Don't cross that line that separates us from Kurama and Naruto, any of you. It was created by the Shinigami and can't be broken. If anyone from our side tries to cross, they will be trapped in Naruto. If one of us Biju were to do it, their Jinchuuriki would die due to losing their Biju and Naruto could die due to the overload of chakra in his system. If one of you Jinchuuriki were to go across, then your soul would be trapped inside Naruto's body and your body would die. Naruto, you and Kurama can't cross it as it directly affects you. Okay, replied all of the Jinchuuriki. Now that is out of the way. Hello kid, how are you? Asked Roshi. I'm fine, replied Naruto. He was still scared even if he knew they wouldn't hurt him. Where are you from? Asked Fu. KKK on NNOHA. The stutter got worse. Fear flooded him. He looked at the ground again. Why are you stuttering? Fu asked, her voice hinting the annoyance she felt. Truthfully, she was nervous. The other Biju had told them that there was another kid like her and the other Jinchuuriki, so when they managed to get him to the mindscape she was both happy and nervous. As she spoke she tried to hide her nerves with annoyance. Calm down will ya. I'm SSS or RRI. Naruto felt his heart quicken, memories flooded his mind. How they disciplined him for even breathing loudly. Kurama felt his discomfort and nudged him gently with the tip of a mighty tail, reminding him of the comforting fox's presence. He looked up and smiled at his new mother, failing to hide the fear in his eyes. "Come on kid, we won't bite," said Yugito, smirking a little. None of the Jinchuuriki were aware of how harsh his life was, only the Biju knew, as Kurama wisely kept it between them. The Biju thought that they shouldn't know the absolute worst humanity had to offer. Naruto's eyes were now wide. The damn broken memories flooded to the forefront of his mind. "Come on kid, we won't bite, but my friends might," Anko said, and then created a small fire dragon and it coiled around him before biting his arm. It was about a day into the torture session and Naruto hoped it would be over soon. He was in so much pain. At this point Naruto had started hyperventilating again. He collapsed onto his back as he lived through the memories again. Flashes of it were happening in front of him. Kit, shouted Kurama, taking Naruto in a tail. "Damn it, kid, it's okay. I'm here, it's not real, calm down. Damn it, I'm going to have to put you to a deep sleep, please be okay." Kyuubi then put Naruto into a deep sleep and brought his conscience to his own mind. "Why did you do that?" Matabi nearly screamed at the two girls. What, we didn't do that," said Yugito, nervously. She didn't want to upset anyone, she was just trying to get him to open up. "Yeah, we didn't do anything," Fu shouted back. She was confused. Why was he so scared? Jinchuuriki don't hurt their own. Kurama must have told him that. "You fool," you could see he was uncomfortable and yet you continued, "He has been through a hard time." Chomei screamed, "We all have. We all get treated badly just because he can't take I." Fu began but was silenced when she felt the killer intent. Ki of 8 Biju focused on her. "Fu, you have suffered a hard life but the pain you have felt pales compared to his," Chomei said. "What that boy goes through is more than you could ever imagine," Gyuki stated. "His best day was more horrifying than any of you on your worst," Seiken said grimly. "Any of you would have gone insane in a matter of days if you lived his life," Kukua said sadly. "None of you have any right to judge him on anything, especially after," Shukaku began. "No, it is not our place to speak of that," Isobu said. "But know this, none if you can begin to comprehend his pain." But it couldn't have be," Yugito was stopped by all of the Biju growling. "Child, don't finish that sentence," Son Goku said. "You each are lucky in some ways, for all of you have some method of automatic defense or warning for danger. He did not do to part of the seal. Now imagine if you were the same. You would almost likely be dead." All of the Jinchuuriki were shocked by this. It was true, all of them would be dead due to the assassins and occasional drunken villager when they were younger. To not have it would be a death sentence. How is he still alive? Yagura asked. Without her coral to protect her, she wouldn't have lived past her 4th birthday. Kurama is the best at healing out of all of us. Fixing his body is easy, Kukua answered. But that isn't the worst part. The loneliness has led him to try to kill himself too many times to count, Matabi said sadly. Loneliness, but he had Kurama, Fu said, feeling regret for her actions, even if she hadn't known at the time. No, he did not. The seal that was used prevented all contact unless something extreme enough happened. The first time he and Kurama talked was today. Can you imagine that? No one to comfort you, absolutely no one? I didn't mean to. Fu sobbed. Chomei had been the one to raise Fu. The other Jinchuuriki were her only form of human interaction. Fu loved Chomei for that, but now the Biju was angry, they all were, at her. She never meant to hurt anyone. Yugito felt guilty. She didn't want to hurt him. She just wanted to meet the young Jinchuuriki. She wasn't good with new people. That was mostly due to the underwhelming amount of people she had ever had to meet, and then only a few of them she actually trusted. To her, this was bringing in someone she didn't know to her circle of trust, which was a terrifying prospect to her. As the two of them were shouted at by the Biju, the other Jinchuuriki watched. The older ones, Roshi, B, Hana, and to some extent Yagura, felt sad. They knew that there were worse fates than their own. Utakata silently agreed with Fu's argument. How was his life any worse than the others? Why was he so special? Gaara, however, was terrified. He had never felt his Ka-chan so angry before. And why did the other one leave? He didn't even get to talk to him. Artemis Camp. Artemis had just found a new hunter. She, like all of the others who joined her group, started to hate men. The goddess then thought back to her baby boy and was once again worried. What was he like? Was he like all of the other men? No, he was her son, he would be different. Then she thought back and wondered how his life was. No one would know he was a Jinchuuriki. Hiruzen knew better than to say anything, he knew how they were treated. He was probably enjoying himself, maybe he was in the academy. No, if he's 7 now it would be next year he would join. Yugao was his godmother, she would be raising him. She would probably tell him stories of her life. Oh, how she couldn't wait to surprise him by coming back for him. She only told the Biju of her goddess status so no one could tell him. She knew full well which seal her husband used. He wouldn't be able to talk to any of the Biju or other Jinchuuriki, but he would have a good life, like she did as Kushina. She thought back to the other Jinchuuriki and felt sorry for them. She knew none of them resented her for her life, but she could tell they were jealous sometimes. It was only a matter of years until they could meet again. 8 years and he would be in her arms again. When Naruto woke up he found himself in the fur of his Ka-chan again. He remembered being introduced to his new friends and then nothing. Maybe they had to go, he couldn't quite remember. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Asked his mother. She had curled around him protectively, keeping him warm. Yes, Ka-chan, what happened? You were tired so I brought you here to sleep. The Kyuubi lied, she didn't want him to be scared again. Okay Ka-chan, can I talk to my friends again? I didn't get much time? He asked. Of course, you can, though not everyone will be there. Some of them might have woken up. Or in Gaara's case he might have to leave his meditative state. What's that? Gaara can't sleep, so to go into the mindscape he meditates. Okay, are we there yet? Yes. Only Fu, Yugito and Yagura were there along with all of the Biju. Hello, Naruto said. They all said their hellos, but the 3 girls looked slightly nervous and uncomfortable. Naruto didn't notice this as he was apparently very interested in his feet at the moment. He eventually forced himself to look up at them. He was trying to face his fears because his Ka-chan promised that they wouldn't hurt him. So, he mentally winced at his stutter and thought about what to ask. He then tried not to stutter. Where or why you from? He finally asked. I'm from Kumo. At his confused look Yugito elaborated, the village hidden in the clouds. You live on a cloud? How fluffy are they? Naruto asked, the absurdity of that statement temporarily making him forget his fears. He immediately looked down to the ground straight after saying it. Yugito giggled and the other 2 smirked. I don't live on a cloud. Naruto, I live on a mountain. My house is near the top though, I am above some of the clouds. And clouds aren't very fluffy. She rubbed her arm awkwardly and scowled. They're wet, and not fun to bounce on. In fact you can't, you just fall through them. Stupid bee. She muttered the last bit. Oh, sorry, Naruto felt stupid. He was worried they would hate him for being stupid. He looked down at the ground sadly. There's nothing to be sorry about, Yugito said kindly. He looked up at her. It is a silly name. She said with a smile. Yeah, Naruto agreed, smiling slightly. I live in the village hidden in the mist, Yagura said, bringing herself into the conversation. You mean everyone in your village misses each other? Naruto asked. No, Yagura giggled. Mist, it's like clouds, but on the ground. She explained, there's a lot of water as well. Oh, sorry, Naruto began, looking down again, but Yagura interrupted him. Don't apologize, you did nothing wrong. She smiled at him. He slowly reciprocated it. Well, Fu said, I live in the village hidden in the waterfalls. It's got lots of waterfalls. Fu finished. Cool, Naruto said. He scrunched his face up in concentration. Are waterfalls what happens when the sky goes gray and the clouds come out, and the sky spits down? No, that's rain. Waterfalls are like cliffs with huge amounts of water falling down them. Fu said. Oh, Naruto felt really stupid now. He looked down again. Well, I'm from the village hidden in the leaves. There are a lot of trees there, so I guess that's why it's called that. There are lots of trees where I live too, Fu said. In fact, I live in one. Really? Naruto asked. Are you one of the green tree people then, because you don't look very green? Green tree people? Yugito asked. Yeah, they live in the trees, they don't stay around too long, though they're always giggling. Naruto said. Tree nymphs, Kurama said. They normally stay away from humans. They only show themselves to sages and animals. There was no mention of the fact that they only started appearing after the gods started showing up to their vacation world who knows how long ago. They only stopped when they realized the effects it was having on the 2 worlds. Oh, so are you a tree nymph? Naruto asked. No, I just live in a hole in the tree. Fu said, pretty confused to what nymphs were. I'm sorry, but I think it is time for us to go. I should be waking up soon. Oh, Naruto said, like a kicked puppy, making Fu not want to leave. Now, don't worry Naruto-kun, Kurama said. There'll be plenty to keep you occupied until they come back. We have to teach you a few things. Like what? Naruto asked. We need to get you to the same level as your classmates will be, so they don't have an advantage over you. It's not because you're stupid or anything, it's because you haven't had an education. Matabi said, trying not to hurt his feeling. Okay, Naruto said, so what will I be learning? Just the basics, how to read and write, and other things that other children would know. Chomei said. Okay. The other Jinchuuriki all woke up and left him to his education. The next night he met up with all of them and they talked again. This time he wasn't as afraid of them, they were like him and they couldn't hurt him. His Ka-chan said they wouldn't hurt him either, but he had learned long ago that it only mattered if the person could hurt you, as eventually they will hurt you. The only people who didn't were the nice ramen people and the old man. He hit it off with Gaara immediately, especially when he saw the cool sand that he could use. Then they all tried to play a game, but they couldn't think of one that Naruto could play due to the seal. Naruto was getting sad thinking his new friends would leave, that is until something landed beside him. It was Hana's hat. Looking up he saw her hair. It was rust red like her armor and short. She kept her face mask on so he couldn't see her face. Well, are you going to throw it back? Hana asked, now that he looked at it. The shape was quite similar to a frisbee. Now that he could play with them he was happy. This was the first time he got to play with anyone. He was happy. They played for a while until the others woke up. He then talked to the Biju and got to know them a bit. This was how his life played out for the next month. By day he would learn from the Biju, by night he would play with the other Jinchuuriki. Eventually it came time for him to leave his coma and go back to the outside world, something he wasn't excited about. As Naruto started to stir, one of the guards stationed outside his door went to inform the Hokage that he would be waking soon. When Naruto woke up he saw a familiar old man on the edge of his bed. Gigi, he shouted, lunging to give him a hug. The old man had a smile on his face at that. The boy was still the same, at least he hoped so. Hello Naruto, how are you? I'm okay Gigi. He was his anchor, the person who'd been there for him from the start. Even in the orphanage he had visited him. He trusted him more than the Ichirakus. Naruto, the elderly Hokage said, breaking the hug, after what's happened I'm going to put a few guards on you to try to help you. Don't worry, these ones won't hurt you. He said with a grimace. Naruto looked blankly at him. This wasn't the first time the Hokage had said he would be safe. The Hokage sighed before continuing. Cat, snake, bat. He called, and 3 Anbu appeared wearing masks, like their namesake. They all wore standard Anbu clothing. These 3 will protect you and act as your caretakers. They will help get food. I can tell you haven't been eating well. Naruto gulped before nodding. He glanced at the 3 women. He flinched. At least he wouldn't have to see them all the time. Time skip. Naruto had been released from the hospital. He was back on the streets of Konoha and he was terrified. He vaguely knew that the Anbu were with him, one each side and one behind. He couldn't be bothered remembering which was which, though he guessed he would figure it out at a glance. At the moment though, the names of his guards was the least of his concern. The moment he was seen, people silenced themselves. Children were led away. Everyone was staring, those damned eyes, so much hate, so much anger. A wave of anxiety washed over him, a memory of, then, when he woke up there, the first thing he saw was darkness. When the lights turned on, the first thing he noticed was the glares. Well, that was a lie. The very first thing he noticed was the very loud drill in the hands of the red-haired woman. He shivered. The eyes though, they held so much hate, so much anger, so much promised pain, just like the sea of eyes glaring at him now. There were so many, it was like looking at the stars, but more intense, angrier, scarier. Naruto knew what happened now. A bottle or a rock, or occasionally a kunai, maybe even a stick. Someone in the crowd would throw it, it would hit him. That would set off the crowd, they would chase him, all the while hurling more random objects. They would usually be worse than the first. In this lineup, there was guaranteed to be knives, butcher cleavers, steak knives, sometimes even butter knives. Then they would. That train of thought stopped suddenly. The first stone was thrown. Literally, a rock about the size of his fist was headed in his direction. The world seemed to slow down. He stared at the rock, it was slowly nearing him. At the moment he remembered a joke Roshi had told him when they were playing with the frisbee. They had only been playing for 10 minutes at most, they had been quiet for the most part, not an awkward silence, a comfortable one. It was broken when Roshi spoke up. Fu had just thrown the disc and it was going straight for the aforementioned Jinchuuriki's chest, he smirked. As she threw the frisbee I began to think, he narrated, and I thought, I wonder why the frisbee gets bigger when it gets closer, and then, the hat bounced off his chest and he looked up, a stupid grin decorating his face, it hit me. Naruto couldn't help the small twitch that may have been a smile tugging at his lips. The phantom twitch disappeared as he was brought back to reality with the stone headed straight for him. He got ready for it to make contact. He knew what would happen after, what always happened. He flinched away, silently hoping that something different would happen this time, but he knew it wouldn't. Smack. Naruto looked up, the rock hadn't hit him. He glanced to where he last knew the rock was. Now there was a hand, in front of the rock's path. This hand however wasn't floating in midair, not having randomly materialized into existence randomly, which Naruto believed was the most likely conclusion. Instead, this particular hand was attached to an arm, which was attached to a torso, which happened to belong to a particularly annoyed-looking Anbu. This particular Anbu had a mask that looked like a cobra poised to strike with its fangs at the ready. The hand in which the rock resided slowly clenched. A soft crunching sound was coming from it. It was practically amplified, being the only sound in the street that the Jinchuuriki currently resided in. All the other occupants were transfixed on the rock, like Naruto was. The Anbu Naruto now remembered being called Snake was clenching her gloved fist, slowly adding pressure, until eventually. Crack! Shards of rock exploded from her hand, a small cloud of dust from the rock being the only reminder that a rock had been there a few seconds ago. The Anbu just looked at her hand, then glanced slowly around the civilians, who upon being under her scrutinizing gaze stepped back. There was a minute's silence, like everyone was silently mourning the rock. Did it have a family? If so, they must miss it now. Naruto decided that he didn't care, he didn't like that rock. He decided to name him Orion. For some reason that name was the first listed in his brain under the file name, assholes. Even if he never met anyone called Orion. Now that he had met an Orion, he instantly disliked him. That rock was going to hit him, good thing he's dead. That got Naruto thinking, would the family make a grave for him? Would he get a tombstone? No, that could be like his mother or something. The crowd stopped their mourning and started muttering. He picked up a few shreds of conversation. Demon whore, monster lover, Kyuubi. That last one decided not to finish his insult, though that may have had something to do with the 24-inch blade currently embedded in his throat. So, unless his insult was, Kyuubi glug glug cough gasp bleg, in which case he really needed to work on his insults. Again, the crowd went silent, this time staring at the cat-masked Anbu who quickly removed the now very bloody blade from the freshly furnished emergency exit to his trachea. Looks like there was an emergency, or the blood just wanted to get away from the shit that was coming out of the regular exit. The Anbu then quickly wiped the blood on a cloth and resheathing it on her back, and walking back to her place to the left of Naruto. You can't do that. Someone finally yelled from the crowd, that's against the law. That man broke another law punishable by death. The final Anbu spoke, he is dead and has now fulfilled his punishment. You are welcome to ask for a retrial, but I don't think there is much of a case, or defendant. She said, maybe the Anbu took their names too seriously. Snake struck like a cobra, cat pounced, like a cat. Bat may be using some supersonic frequency to talk the civilians down, never mind. As Naruto was thinking that the man said something that got him as the assistant for a magic show with Bat. Bat was showing the crowd the good old, pull a coin from behind the ear trick. Only she was using a knife instead of a coin. And instead of pulling it out from behind his ear she was taking out of his chest. She didn't seem to be pretty good at this trick, I mean and by the looks of it the crowd had seen her put it in said chest, so it kind of ruined the mystery. That law will be enforced by us from now on, so no breaking it. Bat said. Before going to her original position at Naruto's back, the crowd split down the middle as Naruto began walking again, no one said anything. On the way to his apartment Naruto faced 3 more situations like that, and every time he expected to get hit, one of the Anbus stopped the assailant. Naruto stopped at his door. The usual graffiti was absent, it looked almost clean. We're sorry. Snake said, He turned a questioning gaze to her. "We came here to scope out your home. Make sure that we knew where everything was. We didn't change much, just the mattress. But we cleaned up the rubbish, fixed the broken furniture, got the water and electricity working again, and cleaned up the stains." She finished, sheepishly scratching her head. "Why are you being so nice?" Naruto asked. Why are you protecting me? Why do you act like you care?" He nearly broke down. Was this a trick? Some elaborate hoax? "We do care," Kat said, her voice sounded sincere. "We are here to help you, to take care of you. No matter what, though, we still care about you." The others nodded in agreement. A hopeful gleam appeared in his eyes but was clouded over by distrust. Whatever. He then entered his apartment, looking around at all the changes. It was like a new place. The floor looked brand new. He didn't even know that it was originally that color, he just remembered the brown-red color it had become. As he entered his bedroom, he saw there was a new bed waiting for him, much better than his old one. "Do you like it?" Snake asked, nervously. Naruto looked and saw that they had followed him in and were standing at the doorway. "Yeah," he quietly murmured, "thank you." He said, he really hoped this wasn't a trick. If it was, it would be a cruel one. Time skip. Naruto, now 10, was going to try to be a ninja early. After years, his fears had lessened due to his Jinchuuriki family and Anbu guards who he eventually warmed to. His fear of women hadn't gone away though. His family had been trying to help him on that front. They were all helping get over his problem to the point where he would be able to talk to girls, and he was making progress. He didn't freeze up as much anymore in public. The attacks had all but stopped after finding out his guards were authorized to use lethal force. He still hadn't learned any of his guards' names or seen them without their masks on. He was still very uncomfortable in public and usually tried to avoid it when possible, and it was made easier by the fact that most of the parents told their children to stay away from him and everyone else already put effort into doing just that. He was fine with this. He had his Jinchuuriki brothers and sisters to be friends with, speaking of which they had all managed to become ninjas except him and Gaara. That was why he wanted to be one, to prove he was strong like them. So, after a year of staying at the back, avoiding everyone, especially the girls, trying to make sense of the floating kanji and just generally being a shadow, he had been allowed to try for the final exam. He had just done the theory exam and thought he did okay. Well, considering the ink didn't like staying on the paper, he thought it was okay. Now all that was left was the practical exam. He had to perform bunshins. Damn it, for the life of him he couldn't understand why he couldn't do it. Roshi said maybe he was using too much chakra, so he put the smallest amount he could. Still nothing, he failed the exam. There was always next year. The Chunin giving the exam said, giving him a sneer. He left and went home to enter the mindscape. He wanted to talk to his family. They managed to cheer him up. After all, there was always next year. A year later. Again, he failed, another sneer. This year, instead of listening to the boring theory, he started pranking random people, and people who deserved it. Ka-chan approved, said it was good to have a hobby. The Anbu silently approved too. They didn't talk much, but when they did, they were nice. The instructors didn't realize it was him. No one did. He was so quiet they just didn't notice him. It was better than being picked on, so he did nothing to change it. Unfortunately, one of the instructors seemed to have caught on that it was him. They hadn't confronted him yet, and there was no evidence. But beneath the layer of paint and glitter he caught his eye, and gave him a knowing glare. Maybe next year Iruka would be prepared for his pranks. As he walked home, he wondered why he couldn't do one simple jutsu. Even the kid who didn't have a working chakra system passed because he was very good at taijutsu. Why couldn't he pass? Ah well, maybe next year. Next year. He had failed again and he knew this was his last chance. His Ka-chan was trying to keep him happy, but it wasn't working. He was acting so depressed about it that he didn't notice someone behind him until they spoke up. "Hey Naruto, don't be so sad," Mizuki said, grinning slightly at his plan. "But Masuki-sensei, that was my last chance." Naruto said. Mizuki wasn't the worst. He ignored him most of the time, but for now he just looked like he was consoling a sad student. Well, Mizuki grinned. Later that night, Naruto was running as fast as he could. He had the scroll of seals on his back. He just needed to make it to the shack Masuki-sensei told him about. "Naruto, something about this doesn't seem right," Kyuubi said. "It'll be fine, Ka-chan. Masuki told me about it. It's just a test. All I have to do is learn a jutsu from the scroll and then give it to Masuki." Naruto thought back. He made it to the shack with plenty of time and began looking for a jutsu to learn. Then he had a good idea. What if the key to his seal was on the scroll? He relayed this idea to his Ka-chan and she told him to look for it. As he went through the scroll he saw some very complicated jutsu that he knew he had no chance at learning. The only one he thought he had a shot at was the shadow clone jutsu. He finally came to a storage seal that said, Reaper Death Seal Key. He unsealed it and saw that a piece of paper came out of the seal. He read the instructions which told him to put it on his arm and it would print the seal on him. He put the paper on his arms and pressed down. It was like a temporary tattoo. The marking went from elbow to the palm of his hand, and looked like little boxes with a circle at the end. He looked at it but didn't open the seal. He would save it for later when he knew Masuki-sensei wouldn't see him. Well, now that is sorted, we should get to work learning this jutsu. In the Hokage's office. In the Hokage's office there was complete chaos. Everyone was panicking as they found out that the scroll of seals was gone. When they found out Naruto was the perpetrator, things got more chaotic as many were complaining that the demon got too powerful. The Hokage stopped all the chaos with a glance. Okay, Cat, Snake, Bat, what happened? We don't know. He talked to Mizuki, went home and then disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? When I went in to give him groceries for his dinner he just wasn't there. We found a hole under his bed that led to another apartment, and since no one else lives in his apartment block no one could tell us where to go. I'll try to locate him with my crystal ball. The old Hokage used the ball. It brought up an image of Naruto trying the shadow clone jutsu. After seeing this the Hokage and Naruto's Enbu paled as this was a jutsu that would kill a normal academy student. When Naruto completed it successfully everyone in the room was shocked. Cat, Bat, Snake, go and find him before he finds anything else on that scroll. Most of the jutsu are suicide jutsu. There is also the key to his seal. At this everyone paled even more than his student Orochimaru. They Anbu ran out to get him as quickly as possible, fearing for the life of their young charge. While they did this the Hokage sighed. If Naruto accidentally opened the seal there was no telling what could happen. Back with Naruto. I did it, he exclaimed. After a couple of tries he managed to get the shadow clones right. That meant he could be genin and a ninja. He would be like his brothers and sisters. Well done Naru-chan, Kurama said happily. Thanks, Ka-chan. Naruto, he heard. He turned and saw the three Anbu who guarded him. Hey Cat Ne-chan, Snake Ne-chan, Bat Ne-chan. What are you doing here? Did you get here to tell me if I passed the test or not? He started to trust them. Even if they were normally quiet they protected him. They helped him. He might not know what they looked like but they were family. They took care of him, fed him and protected him. He knew that Ka-chan tried but the fox wouldn't be able to care for him in the same way. Test? Snake asked incredulously. Yeah, the test to let me pass as a genin. Mizuki-sensei said if I did this I could become a ninja. Naruto replied happily, so did I pass? Naruto, what or why? Bat began but stopped when she heard the sound of shuriken coming at her. They all jumped away as the shuriken impacted where they once stood. They looked to for the perpetrator only to see to their horror Mizuki holding a kunai to Naruto's throat. Okay, now stay back or I will finally shut this brat up. Permanently, Mizuki said. Mizuki-sensei, what are you? Naruto began only to be stopped by Mizuki hitting him on the head with the butt of his kunai. The three women grunted at that. Shut up demon. Mizuki began. Do you have any idea how hard it was pretending to be nice to you? No, I guess you don't but I'm sure your guards do. He said. The three girls flinched slightly. Mizuki, put down Naruto, you're under arrest. Bat said. Mizuki laughed at that. Oh, I'll put him down, after I tell him exactly what he is. The Anbu looked shocked at that. Don't, that's forbidden. Cat shouted out. She walked forward but Mizuki brought the kunai closer to Naruto's throat. What are you talking about? What am I? Naruto asked. Before that, Mizuki began. Remove your masks. I need to know who it is that has been protecting this beast. No, Cat began but was interrupted by Mizuki. You will do it or I'll bleed him dry. Mizuki said, punctuating this statement by stabbing Naruto in the shoulder, causing him to flinch slightly. He had faced much worse pain so this wasn't bad for him but it still hurt. Fine, just don't hurt him. Snake said, and brought her hand to her mask which was followed by Cat and Bat. We're sorry Naruto. What are you talking about? You? He stopped when he saw who was beneath the masks. He remembered them from that night. He remembered that they tortured him along with all of the other kunoichi in the village. His eyes widened and his heart was beating like crazy. Did they plan this from the start? Why did they guard him? Was the old man in on this? No, it's all some cruel trick. Ha ha, so I was right when you three disappeared. To think you were the guards. Ironic, isn't it, Naruto? Mizuki said smugly. He glanced at the Jinchuuriki and smirked at his shocked expression. Naruto, oh, I think he remembers you. Who would have thought he would be effective like this? Mizuki, how do you know about that? Kurenai asked. Oh, no one ever found out. I was the one whose idea it was to kidnap him and torture him. I didn't think it would work, but it did better than that. But wow, you all went all out. I didn't expect any of you to actually rape a small child. Tut, tut, tut. They all flinched at this. We didn't, Anko began, but was stopped by Naruto, who seemed to get out of his fear-induced trance to ask one question. Why? Again, they flinched except Mizuki, whose smirk grew in size. Well, now that is the question, isn't it? Do you want an answer? Of course, you do, you see. Don't do it, Mizuki, you. Anko was silenced by Naruto when he screamed, shut the fuck up. Hurry up and tell me. Very good, Naruto, why with a little, Mizuki began. Quiet, hurry up and tell me. Naruto interrupted again. Fine, on October 10, 12 years ago the Kyuubi attacked. The Yondaime couldn't kill it, so he sealed it into a young baby. That monster lives inside you, Naruto. Naruto whispered something too quiet for anyone to hear. What was that, Naruto? Mizuki said. I said, don't call Ka-chan a monster. He screamed and then turned to look Mizuki in the eye. His usual blue eyes became red and glowed ominously. Mizuki let go of him as he felt his hands begin to burn. He jumped back. Ka-chan? Whispered Anko. As she said this, both Kurenai and Yugao came to the same horrifying conclusion. The Kyuubi had been influencing Naruto. Back in the Hokage Tower, the third thought the same. Naruto then ripped his jacket off, exposing his horribly scared body. The Kyuubi's chakra showed all of his previously healed scars. It also showed the seal on his stomach and the newly formed seal on his arm, the key. His body looked like the canvas of some demented artist's masterpiece. Blade marks crisscrossed his chest. Kanji formed words across him. The occasional name some villager carved into him to force him to remind of his crimes. His back from his right shoulder blade to his left hip had an enormous burn mark. The flesh melted grotesquely. His face wasn't as bad, but white scars crisscrossed. His throat had scars painting a ghastly smile. At this sight, the Hokage was terrified, as he knew Naruto had access to the key and could open the seal at any time. At the same time, the women became horrified seeing the scars he had. Naruto then brought his arm with the key to the seal on his stomach. Naruto, please calm down. Anko said. Naruto's red eyes then turned to her and she backed away from the gaze. Suddenly he was right in front of her. Please, Naruto, just stop. She begged. Why should I? He said quietly, his voice harsh and angry. How many times? How many times did I ask for you to stop? Well, why should I stop? I'm sorry, Naruto, it wasn't us. There were some ninja, they tricked you. They used genjutsu on you. There were only a couple of ninjas there, most of them don't hate you. Ka-chan says you're not lying. Anko was crying by now and Naruto's eyes were going back to normal. He started to calm down. Eventually all of the Kyuubi's chakra went away and Naruto's scars disappeared. Eventually he just stood there in front of Anko. He turned away and looked around for Mizuki. The others noticed that he had disappeared in the chaos and were looking for him as well. Yugao heard the whoosh of a Fuma shuriken and turned to see it was heading towards Naruto, who hadn't heard it and was unprepared. She jumped in front of it and faced Naruto, who turned to see her at the last minute. His eyes widened as he realized he would have died if not for Yugao. He looked behind her to see Mizuki. He caught Yugao before she fell and saw the oversized shuriken in her back. He saw Mizuki coming to finish the job only for Kurenai to block him and strike him in the throat with a kunai. He collapsed in a heap and the battle was over. He was only a chunin and Kurenai was a jonin. Naruto was still holding on to Yugao. Kurenai then said, Naruto, could you take the scroll back to the Hokage, please? Is Cat going to be okay? He asked with slight worry in his voice. Yes, I'll take her to the hospital. Anko, can you take care of this trash? A nod was Kurenai's answer. We need to talk, he said before grabbing the scroll and taking it to the Hokage. We know, were the thoughts of the conscious members of the three-man team. At the Hokage Tower. That was foolish, Naruto, Kyuubi said. I know, I just couldn't stand him saying you were a monster, Ka-chan. Naruto replied. What's done is done. With that he entered the Hokage's office to see the third looking sternly at him. Naruto, how long have you known of the Kyuubi? The Hokage asked. Since that incident, we met in the mindscape when I entered the coma. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you? Was his reply. The old man didn't speak for a second. Naruto, I didn't tell you to try to give you a chance at a normal childhood. A normal childhood, a normal childhood. Naruto shouted. Naruto, what you thought it was easier to be beaten and not be given a reason, to be tortured for days, weeks, months on end. Naruto plea. No. Goodbye Hokage-sama. Naruto, he sighed, before reaching into his desk. Here, take this. You learned the shadow clone jutsu, you are now a genin. The third said, throwing the headband to Naruto, who caught it before placing it on his forehead. He then walked away, leaving the old Hokage to his thoughts. In the mindscape, later. Okay, so now that we have the key we can enter the shared mindscape proper. Yes, so far, we have been staying inside my mind and the others have been just outside. Now we can all go to the actual shared mindscape. You can now have contact with your brothers and sisters now, Naru-chan. Okay, I think now's as good a time as any. With that, Naruto put his hand to his stomach just over the seal and twisted. This caused the spiral lock to open and the seal on his stomach fully blacked out. The giant gates finally opened and seemingly disappeared. Kurama then gently lifted Naruto up and carried him. Naruto was carried through the archway and they entered the giant forest. Kurama had told Naruto that the Biju's part of the mindscape was shaped by the Biju themselves to fit their desire. As they reached the end, Naruto noticed that the line from the seal was gone. That meant that the key had definitely worked. Waiting there were all of the other Biju, but none of the Jinchuuriki were there yet, which meant that they were likely not asleep yet, or in Gaara's case hadn't entered the mindscape. So, your seal has been opened then? Matabi asked. Yes, I managed to get the scroll of seals. I learned an awesome kinjutsu called multi-shadow clone jutsu. I fought a traitor and I. What? Naru-chan, are you okay? Are you hurt? Chomei asked, and the other Biju were looking worried for him. I'm fine, don't worry, I'm too awesome to be hurt. Naruto said. They made it to the center of the mindscape, which turned out to be a grassy plain that had a circle which from a bird's eye view would resemble a clock face with only 9 numbers on the face. All of the numbers were made of what looked like ink. The Biju all stood on the number that corresponds with their tail number, with him still on Kurama's head. His Ka-chan lowered him so that he was in the middle of the circle. Naruto? How'd you get here? Did you open the seal? Naruto turned to see Yugito coming from what looked to be Matabi's side. She came over to him and wrapped him in a hug. It was the first time another human had actually given him a hug, so he froze for a bit before returning the hug gently. Yeah, I got the key from the forbidden scroll that I may have accidentally stolen, then learned one of the jutsus and gotten involved in fighting a traitor to my village before becoming a ninja. You know, the normal way to earn my headband. Yugito's jaw was scraping the floor at this point. As she was about to ask about the story in more detail, a green blur tackled Naruto to the ground. When the blur of destruction stopped moving, Naruto recognized the blur to be Fu. She was happy to be finally able to hug her little brother, as Gaara's sand stopped her from being overly affectionate. So now that she was able to act like a proper big sister should, she was never going to let go. When Yugito started struggling, she was going to wait. Yugito. She looked to her right to see Naruto smiling at her before grabbing into a big hug that she couldn't escape. But what, how, when, what? Substitution, was his reply. Oh, come here you. I can't believe you tricked me like that. But since this is a big moment for all of us, she said when he let go, only to be brought into another hug. Eventually all of the other Jinchuuriki showed up and were shocked by Naruto's newfound freedom from the seal. Naruto then told the whole story of what happened to him to be able to get to the mindscape and how he earned his headband. Needless to say, everyone, especially Gaara, who passed his exam a week ago, was impressed. He made it to the point to where they removed their masks. He stopped. The Anbu took off their masks, and one of them was involved in a couple of the mobs when I was younger, but only a handful of times. She just told them where I was. I sometimes saw here watching the beatings and doing nothing to help. At the casual mention of beatings, all of the Jinchuuriki got angry that their brother suffered like that, but he told them that these Anbu stopped most of the attacks after that, and the ones that they didn't were rare and only resulted in minor injuries. That stopped as soon as he was able to stop the drunken villagers from attacking him by himself, but even then, they still helped him and treated him like a second family. To hear that one of the good humans was involved in his abuse made them angry. To hear she did nothing on other occasions just broke their hearts. The three of them. Do you remember when I first came here and I was scared and stuttering? After a nod from the Jinchuuriki and a wince from both Fu and Yugito for their part in his panic attack the first time they met. The only way for me to access my mindscape was to either come looking for chakra specifically from Ka-chan or to be in so much pain that my body would go into a coma. At the shocked look on their faces and the gradual look of fear coming from them like they knew they didn't want to know what happened. The Biju all looked saddened. In fact, Kukua, Matabi, Kurama and Chome looked close to tears at what they knew was coming. I came using the second option. There was an incident just after my 7th birthday. I tried to kill myself, which apparently didn't work, again. The other Jinchuuriki had horrified looks on their faces at the thought of the usually confident Naruto trying to kill himself. The casual mention of it made it even worse. He talked like it was something unimportant. But why? Yugito asked, and what do you mean again? Fu finished. Well, I had no one except the old man and he wasn't around much. Everyone else tortured me day in day out, so I decided to end it, but that was what? 8 years ago, so. Wait, 8 years ago you were 4. Yagura said, shocked, hoping one of them was wrong about his age. I know, contrary to popular belief I can do basic maths. But, Yagura began again. And what I mean by again, well, it kind of became a weekly thing I did. He began ignoring the horrified gasps from all of his Jinchuuriki brethren. I also did it when I wanted to go to sleep and avoid the nightmares. I just cut myself till I bled out and had a dreamless sleep. The other Jinchuuriki were completely white and couldn't speak due to the shock. None of them had it bad enough that they ever wanted to kill themselves, and certainly none of them ever tried it. So, I plunged the knife into my chest expecting to wake up in the same place with the knife probably lying on the other side of the room. But I didn't. I woke up, it was dark. I was nailed to a piece of wood. At the start, there was only one of them, but then she brought me to a warehouse where everyone else was. I guess she wanted to be my first. By now, most of the Jinchuuriki were confused, though were still slightly naive to this sort of thing. The only ones who could guess were Roshi, whose eyes widened whilst silently begging his suspicion to be false, Hana, who was begging herself to be wrong, and B, who just felt even more horrified. First what? Yagura asked, her calm voice masking the angry sea of emotion beneath the surface. She raped me, he said quietly, but all of them heard him. Finally, the limit for most of them came. Gaara, Fu and Yugito threw up. Utakata retched and was close to joining the others. Yagura paled and sat down and sobbed quietly. Hana froze and just stared, silent tears coming from her eyes. B collapsed on his back and just stared blankly, and as for Roshi, he walked over to Naruto, who had tears from the memory, and gave him a hug, tears coming down his eyes. The Biju stared on the sadness evident in their eyes. After everyone calmed down, he continued, after that, I collapsed. I woke up in a warehouse and they tortured me. They took it in turns. Nearly everyone in that room raped me at least once. They kept me awake with drugs and pain, for 3 weeks straight. He whispered the last part out and watched as they all cried for him. So that is why you were so scared, because you thought we would do the same, said Hana. Yes, was his reply. We're so sorry, Fu and Yugito said through sobs. It's not your fault, you didn't know, and I wouldn't have blamed you anyway. But because off that, I get scared around girls, I avoid them when I can, but I'm getting better. He said, trying to calm down his siblings. The Anbu who I told you about, how they helped me, how they treat me normal. They were there, they helped them. But Snake said they weren't. She said it was a genjutsu used to try to make me fear women. And so, he finished his story. They spent the rest of the night chatting away and trying to cheer each other up. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.